Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. I want to talk to you today about some of the notes that were released from the Federal Reserve's December FOMC meeting. So these notes were released yesterday, and they have some fairly ominous implications, I believe, for the US economy and also for the dollar moving forward, because it seems like after checking those notes out that the Fed's plan is to collapse this economy and usher in a recession here in 2023, one that I believe we may already be in the midst of. Now, I want to read you a couple of quick excerpts from those notes. First of all, the note said, in discussing the policy outlook, participants continued to anticipate that ongoing increases in the target range for the federal funds rate would be appropriate to achieve the committee's objective. So they're telling us they're going to continue hiking rates in 2023. Now, I don't think that's any mystery, but the overall tone here was fairly hawkish. And one other thing from the notes I'd like to read to you. Participants reaffirmed their strong commitment to returning inflation to the committee's 2% objective. A number of participants emphasized that it would be important to clearly communicate that a slowing in the pace of rate increases was not an indication of any weakening of the committee's resolve to achieve its price stability goal or a judgment that inflation was already on a persistent downward path. Participants noted that because monetary policy worked importantly through financial markets, an unwarranted easing in financial conditions, especially if driven by a misperception by the public of the committee's reaction function, would complicate the committee's effort to restore price stability. And so what they're telling us here is they don't have any plans to ease in the immediate future. Now, I am personally convinced that the Fed is going to return to a policy of easing. I don't think there's any doubt about it. There's no option really other than perhaps a US debt default and a complete collapse of the economy, because with the way the government is spending and borrowing, the Fed is simply going to have to come into these markets and monetize the debt at some point. But based on those notes, the tone is so hawkish that I really believe that the Fed is committed to raising rates until something breaks. And that's what they want, I think. It's part of the Fed's MO. It's the Hegelian dialectic. It's the problem, reaction, solution dynamic that we have seen so many times over the past several decades. And by the time the Fed does return to easing, people are going to be begging for it. I believe that that is ultimately the Fed's plan. And before all of this goes down, you want to get prepared. You want to get into hard assets. At least, that's what I'm doing. It's not financial advice. I just believe that before the Fed's full plan comes to fruition, there is a window we have right now to get into hard assets like gold and silver. That's what I'm doing. I just ordered a tube of 2023 maple leafs from SD Bullion, today's video sponsor, and I am just telling you what I am doing, but I am continuing to get into hard assets. I don't think that there's going to be any other safe haven really from what is coming, because when the Fed crashes markets here, when they usher in this recession, this depression possibly, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly because Americans are already tapped out. Savings accounts are depleted, credit cards are at record highs, interest rates on those debts are moving higher. So everybody's tapped out. The government's completely tapped out. They're running a $1.4 trillion deficit annually, and they're barely keeping this thing moving along, even with that level of borrowing. So the economy is in worse shape than at any point in living memory, I believe. And a lot of it is the result of the Fed's policy. But, I don't think that there's any mistake there. The Fed knows what they're doing. And they're going to crash these markets so that when they return to a policy of easing, which is ultimately what central banks love to do, they love to inflate the currency so they can enrich themselves and they can enrich the wealthiest sector of society by inflating asset prices. And this is all a big wealth transfer, basically. But they are going to crash things first, it seems like, especially when you just take a look at what they're telling us. It's no secret. They're telling us in plain view, in notes and data that are available for public consumption, what is coming. And when things crash, it will be the cover for them to return to a policy of easing. And there's a few other things I think they'll try to slip in there too. One of them is a central bank digital currency. We've heard a lot about that. It's in a test mode right now. They're testing it out with some banks, working out all the kinks, making sure payments can go back and forth. But when things crash, it's not just going to be bailouts and stimulus for the government and for business, although that is going to be those will be the entities that receive the lion's share of the money, but there will also be stimulus and bailouts for American citizens. And We know that that's going to be the case because that's been the MO more than a decade now. And also, there was a Newsweek poll back in December that 63% of Americans are now in favor of more stimulus checks to combat the scourge of inflation. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's so crazy. The fact that people think that somehow stimulus checks is going to fix the inflation problem. And it's mind boggling. But that is likely what's coming. And I believe that when the Fed crashes the economy, one of the stipulations to receive these new stimulus payments, which are likely on the way, will be to accept them in the form of a central bank digital currency. And, that's the whole problem, reaction, solution dynamic. Normally, I don't think that the public would be going for something like a central bank digital currency and the loss of freedoms that come along with it. I mean, we're headed towards a cashless society where all financial transactions are monitored. When the economy collapses and people can't afford food and they can't afford rent and, they're in dire economic straits, well, if you got to sign up for a CBDC to get the stimmy checks, what do you think people are going to do? I think it's fairly obvious. And so before all of this plays out, the one place I think that there will be some modicum of safety is in physical, hard, tangible assets, assets that are outside of the financial system. Because when everything falls apart and the CBDC gets issued in, I don't think bank accounts are going to be safe. I don't think that the dollar itself will be safe. I mean, they'll try to use the control they have over the CBDC to, maintain some value, some purchasing power, but all of this management of the economy ultimately ends up backfiring because the free market is not being allowed to do what it needs to do to fix things here. And so I do think that things are going to get a lot worse in 2023, especially after reading through those minutes from the Fed. And ultimately, I do believe that precious metals will offer some kind of a safe haven from this move that we have coming. I mean, more stimulus, obviously very bad for the dollar when they start running the printing presses and monetizing debt again to try to jumpstart the economy. That is going to be very bad for the inflation problem and for the purchasing power of the dollar. But the thing is, if the Fed crashes the markets, they will have the cover to do just that, which is what they've wanted to do all along. And that's why I think they are persisting with these rate hikes, because these rate hikes that they're doing, there's no chance that they're going to return them to the 2% inflation target. I mean, it's not enough. With the government still running a $1.4 trillion deficit, there's no way that hiking the rates by a few points is going to fight inflation. But it will crash the economy. It will lead to a major economic downturn, and that's going to give the Fed the cover to print more and more money. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. What do you think about these Fed notes that were released yesterday? What do you think about the Fed's ultimate plan to crash the economy? Are we going to see a massive recession this year? What will be the final outcome? How will the Fed react to that? Please leave me a comment down below to let me know what you think. Thank you all very much for watching. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Stay safe and happy stacking, everyone. Smart Silver Stacker, out.